The fire from the sky. Jason was a human engineer. He worked on small cargo ships that moved parts between planets. His ship, the Wren, was old but strong. He was flying alone through a quiet part of the galaxy. The stars looked peaceful. But everything changed in just 1 second. Without warning, alarms started to scream inside the ship. A storm of fire streaked across the stars. Not fire from engines or weapons, this was natural. Meteorites. Rocks burning hot, falling fast. Jason grabbed the controls and tried to turn the ship away, but it was too late. A sharp jolt threw him from his chair. The left side of the ship had been hit. Sparks flew. Systems failed. Lights blinked out. Jason tried to fix it, but the ship had already begun falling. He was crashing, down toward a green and blue planet that wasn't on his map. He pulled hard on the emergency lever. The ship shook. The jungle below was coming closer. Trees, rocks, water. He braced himself. Then everything went black. When Jason opened his eyes, he was lying on a bed of grass. His head hurt, and his suit was torn. The wreckage of the Wren smoked nearby. It had broken into 3 large pieces. His arms shook as he stood up. He checked his body. No broken bones, just bruises. He looked at the sky. It was dark purple, with 2 suns and flying creatures above. This was not Earth. This was not a known planet. Then he heard a soft sound. It was not from an animal. He turned his head slowly. Lying a few meters away was someone else. A girl. She had long silver hair, and her skin was soft blue. Her clothes were torn, and a piece of metal was stuck in her leg. She wasn't human, she was an alien. Jason walked closer, slowly. She was breathing, but weak. He knelt down and touched her neck, still alive. He didn't know who she was. She wasn't from his crew. She must have been in one of the other escape pods, or maybe from another ship that crashed during the storm. He took out his first aid kit and carefully pulled the metal from her leg. She moaned in pain but didn't wake up. He cleaned the wound and wrapped it. Then he sat back and looked around. Tall trees stood like giants. Strange flowers glowed faintly in the distance. The air was warm and heavy. Birds, or what? Looked like birds, called from the trees. It was beautiful, but Jason knew it was dangerous too. Wild planets always were. He dragged some metal sheets from the wreckage and built a small wall near the girl to protect her while she slept. He found an energy pack from the ship and connected it to a broken screen. A weak signal showed up, but it wasn't enough to call for help. They were alone. Completely alone. Night came fast. The 2 suns dropped behind the hills, and the sky turned deep black. Stars moved slowly above them, and the jungle came alive with sound, hisses, screeches, and rustling leaves. Jason didn't sleep. He sat beside the alien girl with a sharp piece of metal in his hand, just in case. He kept watching the trees. Something moved once, too big to be a bird. He waited. The girl moved slightly and whispered something in a language he didn't know. Her voice was soft but full of fear. Jason leaned closer. She opened her eyes for a moment, saw him, and gasped. Then she passed out again. Jason looked at her face. She was beautiful, not in a human way, but in a way that made him stop breathing for a second. And now somehow, they were stuck together, crash-landed on an alien world, alone, with no way home, and the wild around them was waking up. She woke up, screaming. The morning light broke through the thick trees. Strange birds with long wings flew over the jungle, making high-pitched sounds. Jason had not slept. His back was sore and his eyes burned from staying awake all night. But he had to keep watch. This place was not safe, and the alien girl beside him was still unconscious. Suddenly, her body moved. Her eyes snapped open, wide with fear. Then came the scream, loud, sharp, wild. Jason jumped back. The girl sat up fast, gasping. Her eyes locked. Onto him. She didn't know where she was. Her breathing was fast. Her hands shook. Then she saw the metal in his hand. the sharp scrap he used for protection. She panicked. In a flash, she reached for a metal rod lying in the grass. She swung it at him without thinking. Jason dropped his weapon and raised both hands in the air. "Wait! I'm not here to hurt you," he shouted. But she didn't understand. She stood, limping badly from the injury on her leg. Her face was full of confusion and anger. She spoke words in a strange language. Her voice was strong, full of warning. Jason slowly pointed to her leg, and then to the bandage. "I helped you. You were hurt," he said calmly. She didn't lower the rod. Jason took a deep breath and sat down. "I won't fight you. I'm not your enemy," he said. Still, she kept her distance. She looked at the crash site, then the trees, then the sky. Her expression slowly changed. The fear remained, but now it was mixed with sadness. She realized something. Maybe that she was stranded. She looked at him again. This time she didn't raise her weapon. Then a deep growl broke the silence. Jason stood up fast. His eyes searched the jungle. The alien girl froze. Leaves moved. A shadow stepped from the trees. It was large. Its legs were like a cat, but its body was covered in rough green scales. Its eyes were yellow, and it was staring right at them. Jason stepped in front of the girl. The creature lowered its head. It was ready to pounce. Jason held out the sharp metal again. His hands shook. He had no real weapon, no armor, nothing that could stop something this big. The creature moved forward. Jason didn't run. He stayed still. Behind him, the alien girl moved. He didn't turn around, but he heard something shift. A quiet click. The next second, she threw something over Jason's shoulder. A long spear, sharp and made from metal parts of the ship, flew through the air. It hit the creature's side. The beast let out a roar and ran back into the trees, crashing through the leaves. Silence returned. Jason turned around. The girl stood, holding a second spear. Her eyes were cold, serious. She had saved him. She said something again in her language. Jason didn't understand, but he nodded. "Thank you," he said. They stared at each other for a long time. Then, slowly, the girl lowered her spear. Jason smiled, tired but thankful. They were not friends yet. They didn't speak the same words. But, in that moment, something changed between them. They both wanted to live, and now, they would have to survive together. In the wild, where every sound could mean danger, and trust was the only hope. The night is not safe. By afternoon, the heat grew heavy. Jason worked silently while the alien girl watched him with cautious eyes. They didn't speak, but they began to understand each other through small actions. Jason pointed at broken parts from the ship and stacked them for shelter. She nodded and helped him lift pieces of metal, her movements slow from the pain in her leg. Together, they built a small wall with gaps, just enough to protect from wind or small creatures. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. The girl, still silent, added sharp sticks around the edges. Jason understood. She knew this planet better than he did. She was preparing for something. As the second sun dipped lower in the sky, a strange silence fell over the jungle. Even the loud birds had stopped singing. Jason looked up. The light was dimming, but the sky was clear. That silence, it wasn't normal. The girl stiffened. Her eyes scanned the trees. Her body tense. Jason whispered, "What is it?" She didn't reply, but she grabbed her spear and pulled Jason behind the wreckage. Then, as the last sun disappeared behind the trees, the jungle changed. Soft glowing, lights appeared on some of the plants. Tiny flying creatures buzzed through the air. The air grew colder, and the sounds returned, but this time different, deeper, closer. Jason held his breath. The rustling began again. Something large moved in the dark, just beyond the trees. The alien girl raised her hand to her lips, telling Jason to stay quiet. They crouched behind the metal, hearts pounding. Then they heard it. Breathing. Heavy, slow breathing. Close. Jason's fingers wrapped around a metal pipe. He didn't want to fight, but he was ready if he had to. The creature passed slowly, its shadow long and twisted. Its legs had joints in the wrong places. Its back was covered in spikes. But it didn't attack. It sniffed the air, then walked away. Slowly. Like it didn't care. Like it was saving them for later. Jason didn't speak until the sound faded. He looked at the girl. Her face was pale, her eyes wide. She whispered one word. Hundrax. Jason didn't know what it meant, but from the fear in her voice, he didn't need a translation. They stayed close that night. Neither of them slept. The jungle was alive in ways that Earth never was. The trees moved when there was no wind. The stars above shifted in unnatural patterns. Just before dawn, Jason saw something strange in the sky. 3 red lights moving in a straight line. Not stars, not birds. Ships? He pointed to them. The girl shook her head. No help, she said softly, in broken English. They hunt. Jason didn't ask more. He just sat down beside her. The message was clear. This planet wasn't just wild, it was hunted. And now they were the prey. Lost and hunted morning came, but the fear from the night didn't fade. Jason's body ached and the alien girl's wound was getting worse. Her limp had become heavier. Still, she didn't complain. She only nodded toward the jungle and pointed at Jason's broken scanner. He checked it again. The screen blinked, softly. Weak signal, but it showed something. A faint energy source deeper in the wild, far beyond the trees. It could be an escape pod, or a communication beacon. Maybe even parts to build a signal. Hope. Jason looked at her and tapped the screen. Go? She nodded once, then looked to the jungle. They packed what little they had. Some dried food bars, a sharp spear, a strip of fabric for water. Jason wrapped her bandage tighter. Her face stayed strong, but her fingers trembled. They walked slowly into the forest, the canopy thick above them. Strange flowers opened with a hiss when touched. Insects buzzed in strange rhythms. Jason marked trees with scratches as they moved in case they needed to turn back. By midday they found ruins. Tall stones stood half-buried in moss, covered in alien symbols. A strange feeling washed over Jason. These weren't from the crash. These were ancient, from a civilization long gone. The alien girl touched the stone gently. Her fingers moved along the markings. Her eyes filled with memory and fear. Jason whispered, "You know this place?" She looked at him and nodded just once. "Old. Not safe," she said. He didn't ask more. The message was enough. They moved on, but something had changed in the air. The jungle was quieter again. Too quiet. Jason stopped walking. He looked around. No birds, no buzzing insects. Even the plants had closed. Then he heard it, crunching leaves. Not far behind. He turned. Nothing there. But the girl already had her spear raised. Her breathing was sharp. Jason whispered, "What is it?" She whispered back, "They follow." He didn't ask who. He didn't need to. Footsteps. Faint but clear. Something, or someone, was behind them. They began to run as fast as her injury allowed. Vines tore at their clothes. Branches snapped beneath their feet. Suddenly, a low voice echoed through the jungle. It spoke in her language. Cold. Commanding. She stopped. Jason grabbed her hand. "Keep moving." But she didn't move. Her eyes filled with fear and shame. She turned to him, her voice shaking. "They find me." Jason's blood turned cold. She hadn't just crashed here. She was running from someone or something dangerous. And now, it had found them both. Her secret passed. Jason stood still, his breath heavy, heart racing. The alien girl didn't move. Her eyes stared at the thick trees behind them. Something out there had spoken, and she had understood it. The voice was deep, sharp, and full of control. It was not calling her back with kindness. It was calling her like an owner calls something that tried to escape. Jason looked at her face. Her hands were shaking and her body leaned slightly backward like she wanted to run, but couldn't. She looked trapped, even out here in the open jungle. "What is it?" Jason asked, his voice low. The girl finally turned to him, her lips parted, searching for the right words in his language. "They come," she said. "Not safe. Not help. Not rescue." Jason's eyes narrowed. "Then who?" She hesitated, then looked at the ground. "Hunters, from my world." Jason felt a chill run down his spine. So she wasn't just a random alien survivor. She was being hunted. And now, because he stayed with her, he was part of it too. "Why are they hunting you?" he asked. The girl looked up, her eyes meeting his. "I escape. From my ship. I was chosen. Not wanted. I run." Jason didn't fully understand, but he caught the most important words. Chosen. Escape. Not want. It sounded like she had been taken by force and had run away. He realized this wasn't just a survival story anymore. This was something bigger, darker. "What did they want from you?" he asked again. Her voice was quiet. "I was not soldier. I was gift." Jason's stomach twisted. A gift? To who? She didn't answer. Instead, she pointed to the direction they had been walking. "We go. Fast." Jason nodded and took her hand without a second thought. They ran again, this time not just to find safety, but to stay ahead of whatever force wanted to take her back. Hours passed. The trees grew taller, the sunlight weaker. Jason's legs felt heavy and the girl stumbled more often now. Her injury was slowing them down. Still, she didn't ask to stop. She kept going. Finally, through a break in the trees, they saw it, a small alien escape pod, half buried in mud and plants. It looked old but not destroyed. Jason rushed forward, pulling open the door. The inside was cramped but mostly untouched. He checked the systems. No way to fly, but one thing still worked. A short-range signal booster. Jason shouted with joy. He could connect it to his ship's broken comms and maybe reach someone, anyone. She crawled inside behind him and sat quietly, holding her spear tightly. Her eyes never stopped watching the trees outside. Jason knelt beside her. "We have a chance. Maybe someone hears us," but she didn't smile. She looked at him and spoke slowly. "If they hear, maybe good, maybe bad." Jason understood what she meant. If someone from Earth got the signal, maybe help would come. But if her people heard it first, suddenly a flash of blue light hit the trees. They both ducked. Another flash followed, then a loud boom. The hunters had found them. Jason slammed the pod door shut. It wouldn't hold forever, but it bought them seconds. The girl looked at him. "Run?" Jason shook his head. "No time. We fight." She seemed surprised but nodded. She handed him a small curved blade from her belt. It was sharp and heavy. Jason wasn't trained for battle, but he could defend. The first explosion hit the pod's outer shell. It shook. Dust fell from above. Then came voices, harsh, calling her name. Jason stood in front of her. "I won't let them take you." Her eyes widened. She whispered, "Why?" He smiled slightly. "Because I saw what they did to you, and because no one protected you before." Her lips trembled. The pod door burst open. 3 tall figures stepped in. They wore black armor with glowing red stripes. Their faces were hidden behind smooth helmets. One pointed a weapon at Jason. The other spoke in the alien language. The girl shouted something back, strong and fierce. One of the soldiers walked closer to her. Jason stepped forward, blade ready. The soldier laughed in a strange, robotic voice. He didn't see Jason as a threat. That was his mistake. Jason slashed the blade across the soldier's arm. Sparks flew. The alien roared and fell back. Chaos followed. The girl leapt forward with her spear, striking one in the leg. Jason grabbed a broken pipe and swung hard at the third. Blood, dark purple, splashed across the floor. The fight was fast, wild, and messy. By the end, 2 soldiers were down. The third crawled away. Jason leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Blood ran down his arm, but he was alive. The girl crawled to him, placed her hand on his chest. Her voice was soft now. "You saved me." Jason looked at her with tired eyes. "We saved each other." Outside, the jungle was quiet again. They didn't know who else was coming, but they were still together. And now their bond was stronger than fear. They were no longer strangers. They were something more. They came for her. The jungle was too quiet again. After the fight in the escape pod, Jason and the alien girl stayed low for hours. Smoke rose from the trees behind them where one of the hunter's energy blasts had burned the ground. 2 soldiers were dead. One had escaped. That meant more would come. And soon. Jason's hands were still shaking. He had never killed anyone before, not even in self-defense. But he hadn't thought. He had only moved when he saw danger in her eyes. The girl, whose name he still didn't know, was no longer a stranger to him. They had fought side by side, bled together, protected each other. She sat near the pod now, wrapping a cloth around Jason's bleeding arm. Her hands were soft, but careful. Jason winced once but didn't pull away. "You okay?" she asked softly. Jason nodded. "You?" She touched the bruise on her cheek and gave a small smile. "Still alive." Jason chuckled under his breath. That small smile meant more than words. It told him she wasn't giving up. Neither was he. But they couldn't stay. Jason used wires from the pod to connect the small signal booster to the last working part of his ship's comm system. He programmed it to repeat a distress message, simple, short, and human. "Survivors. Need rescue. Coordinates attached." The signal was weak, but it was something. The girl watched from the doorway. Her eyes never left the jungle. She was listening, waiting. "They'll come," Jason said, trying to sound sure. She nodded slowly. "Yes. Not just yours." Jason looked at her. "You think your people will find it too?" "They listen always," she whispered. "To find me. They want to take me back." Jason wanted to ask why. Why her? Why did they hunt her across planets? But he already knew part of the answer. She had been a gift, property. Jason hated the word. She stood suddenly, eyes locked on the sky. A low rumble was growing louder, fast. Jason turned and saw it too. A ship. Sleek, dark, shaped like a claw. It flew low and fast over the treetops, its engines rumbling like thunder. It circled twice before stopping in the sky above them. They had been found. Jason pulled her into the trees just as a beam of blue light shot from the bottom of the ship to the ground, burning a perfect circle near the escape pod. Soldiers began to drop from the ship, this time not 3, but 6. Heavily armed, their armor thicker. Their movements faster. They were not here to talk. Jason and the girl crouched behind a large root. The jungle air was hot with smoke and fear. "We can't fight all of them," Jason whispered. She looked down. "Then I give up." Jason's eyes widened. "No, you don't belong to them. You're not a thing they can own." She blinked, her voice low. "They say I was made for bonding. They take girls like me, raise us for others. I ran. They call it shame." Jason felt something burn in his chest. Rage. He took her hand. "Then we don't let them win." She looked at him confused. "How?" Jason smiled, though his face was tense. "We give them a surprise." The 2 of them moved through the jungle slowly, crawling through thick plants and hiding behind roots. Jason marked the path in his head. If they could reach the waterfall. They saw 2 days ago they could escape through the cave behind it, but one of the soldiers was already near. Jason froze. The soldier scanned the trees. A light flashed from his weapon, sweeping the ground. Jason picked up a rock and tossed it, to the left. The sound drew the soldier away. They ran. Branches slapped Jason's face. Roots grabbed at his feet. Behind them, voices shouted, and beams of energy blasted through the trees. One struck a rock near Jason's head and exploded. They jumped into the river and let the current carry them downstream. Water pulled at their bodies. Jason held her hand tightly, never letting go. Finally, they saw it. The waterfall. They swam hard, pushing against the current. Reaching the cave, they crawled inside, soaking wet and gasping. The sounds of the soldiers faded behind them. Inside the cave, it was cold and dark. The girl pulled her legs up and wrapped her arms around them. Jason sat beside her. For a long time, they said nothing. Then she spoke. "My name is Sayela." Jason turned to her, surprised. She had never told him before. "I'm Jason." She looked at him, her eyes calm but sad. "If your people come, I can't go. They'll find me again." Jason shook his head. "They won't take you. I'll protect you." Her voice was soft. "You already did." The cave was quiet except for the dripping water. They were tired, hurt, but still alive. Jason leaned his head back. "They came for you," he said. "But they'll leave empty-handed." Sayela smiled again. This time her smile was full. Not because they were safe, but because for the first time someone had chosen her freedom over fear. Just us and the wild. The cave was cold and quiet. Sayela sat beside Jason with her arms around her knees, her silver hair wet and tangled. Jason's body ached, but he stayed alert. He listened for footsteps, ships, or voices, but all he heard was the slow dripping of water echoing off stone. The hunt had paused, but the danger was still close. Jason stared at the broken communicator in his hands. The distress signal was still running. Somewhere out there, someone might hear it. Maybe a human rescue ship, maybe not. He had no way to know. He looked at Sayela. Her eyes were open, but she wasn't looking at anything. She was deep in thought. "You still afraid they'll find you?" he asked softly. She nodded without looking up. "They never stop." Jason sighed. "Then we keep moving." Sayela turned to him slowly. "You don't have to stay. They only want me. You can go." Jason raised an eyebrow. "And leave. You hear?" "Not a chance," she frowned slightly. "Why?" Jason leaned back against the cave wall. "Because I've seen who you really are. You're not weak. You're not someone to be owned. You deserve freedom, like anyone else. And because I care." Sayela's lips trembled slightly. She looked away, but her voice was steady. "No one ever said that to me before." Jason smiled gently. Then they were fools. Hours passed. When the sky outside grew darker again, Jason stood up and peeked through the narrow opening in the rocks. "No movement, no lights, no sounds of soldiers. We move at night," he said. Sayela stood slowly. Her legs still hurt, but she didn't complain. She just nodded. They walked carefully through the jungle, sticking to the shadows, stepping over roots and ducking under branches. The air smelled of smoke and flowers. The trees were taller here, and strange vines glowed dimly as they moved. Beneath them, suddenly Sayela stopped and touched Jason's arm. "Look," she whispered. Jason followed her gaze. There, across a wide field, a ship stood, but it wasn't like the others. It wasn't shaped like a claw or a weapon. It was sleek, silver, and had markings in English. It was human. Jason's heart jumped. "Rescue," he breathed. They heard us. The two of them crept closer. The hatch of the ship was open, and two humans in explorer suits were setting up equipment. Jason waved both hands and called out, "Hey, over here!" The humans turned quickly, aiming scanners. Then they ran toward them. Within seconds, Jason and Selah were surrounded by warm lights, voices, and help. Name? One rescuer asked. Jason Hale. Ship. The Wren. Crashed 4 days ago. The rescuer nodded, then looked at Selah. She with you? Jason placed a hand on her shoulder. Yes, she's with me. They were led inside the rescue ship, wrapped in thermal blankets. Selah sat beside Jason, eyes wide. Everything inside was strange to her. She had never seen a human ship before. The rescuer asked, Who is she? We're getting strange readings. Jason looked at Selah. Her name is Selah. She was being hunted by her own people. She's not dangerous, she's just trying to live free. The rescuer looked unsure. She's not on any known alliance list. We'll need to run checks. Jason's jaw tightened. She's under my protection. She helped me survive. Without her, I'd be dead. The rescuer paused, then nodded slowly. We'll note that. As the ship lifted into the sky, Selah leaned close to the window. She watched the jungle below shrink into the distance. For the first time, she didn't look scared. You're free now, Jason whispered. She turned to him. Not yet. But maybe. Close. The journey through the stars was quiet. Selah stayed close to Jason the entire time. When they reached the Alliance medical station, she was scanned, questioned, and tested. But every time someone looked at her like a threat, Jason stood between them. She's not just some alien, he said again and again. She's a person, and she's with me. The officers finally agreed to a temporary human escort. Jason signed his name next to hers on the report. The paper called her Alien Subject 4529. He scratched it out and wrote Selah. They were given quarters on the station while decisions were made. For now, they were safe. One evening, as the artificial lights dimmed and the stars outside the window glowed, Selah sat beside Jason on a bench. She held a small cup of warm liquid, something she couldn't name, but liked. I don't know what happens now, she said. Jason looked at her. You can stay. We'll find a place. We'll build something new. Selah's voice shook. But I don't belong here. I don't belong anywhere. Jason leaned closer. You belong with someone who chooses you, not someone who owns you, not someone who hunts you. She looked at him with tears in her eyes. You choose me? Jason reached out and gently touched her hand. Every time. Selah didn't reply. She just leaned against him, resting her head on his shoulder. The wild world was behind them now. But the bond they built in that jungle, through fire, fear, and fight, was real. They had crash-landed as strangers, but now they walked forward as something much more.